Okay, I'm going to pin this video because in some of the comments I will get, well, Marcus, how do I contact you? Or what is this birth injury investigation thing that you are talking about? I want to talk about quickly 4 points to this video. First of all, there is a telephone number on the screen. I'm going to keep it on throughout the entire video. That is how you can reach me. But what I want to help you understand, especially if you're new to this HIE or this traumatic brain injury journey, I am what we call a birth injury attorney. And what I do is I help families be able to understand the cause of their baby's traumatic brain injury at birth. And when we're talking about HIE, or in my context, this is hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, and how we see it is when a baby has suffered a reduction of blood and oxygen or oxygenated blood, and this has caused them or led them to suffer a traumatic brain injury. And for parents, a lot of times the question is, well, how did this happen? Especially if things were going good during pregnancy. Pregnancy was pretty uneventful, and then now all of a sudden you have a baby with a devastating traumatic brain injury. And so I'm going to talk about 4 big points in this video. First of all, to talk with me initially about what you have going on, about your baby story, that costs nothing to reach out and talk with us, okay, about what happened. I know that that sometimes can be a barrier for people because they're like, well, lawyers are expensive or they charge a lot by the hour. It costs nothing to initially talk with us about what happened to your baby. So that's first and foremost. There's no cost there. Number 2, when we're talking about this birth injury investigation, what we like to do is we have to, be able to review the medical records. And in some cases, families will say, well, I have records, or I got the records, and you can review what we have. That's fine, especially if the family does have all of the medical records. But what we found is that in many instances, these will be incomplete records. They may have mom's records, or they may have baby's records, but they do not have the readings from the electronic fetal heart monitor. So what we like to do is we like to collect all of the records that are relevant to this situation. So that's going to be mom's records, baby's records, the readings on the electronic fetal heart monitor, and if we need initially to be able to get the pregnancy records, those records also too, we'll go ahead and we will get those. So number 2 is it's getting the medical records. And number 3, in this investigation, we will assess from a medical legal standpoint whether we think that this case, or that we think that birth trauma or medical malpractice is what has caused the injury to your child. And so when in this assessment, what we're going to be looking to see is to make sure that there was no genetic issues that were present, because if there are genetic issues, then that's going to mean that the cause of the injury is more likely not going to be something that the doctors or the nurses or the hospital, something that they did. It's not going to be that if it's genetic in general. Developmental, we got to make sure that there are no developmental issues that are present, because again, if we have developmental things that are present, then that's going to mean that element of causation, that's not going to be there in regards to the doctors or the nurses of the hospital causing the injury or the harm. So that 3rd point is looking at and assessing from a medical legal standpoint. That is important to understand, because just because you may have gotten a result that you were not expecting, that does not necessarily mean that medical malpractice was the cause. So it's important to have someone like myself, to be able to assess it from a medical legal standpoint. And number 4, if we feel that, in our early assessment that we need to send this out and have medical experts to be able to look at things, that is also what we're going to do. In a lot of these cases, you have to have, especially if you're here in a state like Maryland, where I am, you have to have medical experts for these cases. And that is because you have to be able to show that there was a departure from the standard of care, which is what caused the injury or the harm. And to be able to do this, you need medical experts to be able to give opinions and to be able to review the records and be able to say what happened, from that standpoint. So getting those medical experts, and that's something that you don't have to worry about. You may be wondering, well, how do I get these medical experts, or what experts am I going to need? Am I going to need an OB, GYN? Am I going to need a nurse midwife? Am I going to need a labor and delivery nurse, pediatric neuroradiologist? We know the experts that will be needed based on what was going on. So you don't have to worry about that. So I know I talked about a lot in this video, but it's here to help you. And like I said, I'm going to pin this video, and this reply is going to be used. I'm going to use it as a reply when individuals in the comments say, well, how do I contact you? Or what is this birth injury investigation thing that you're talking about?